All right, and welcome back to Worldview. In studio this morning, we are joined by two guests. We have Zipporah Musyoki-Webola, who is the Regional Coordinator of Education for Sustainable Development Program. And we also have Brian Waswala, who is the an environmental education specialist. Many thanks for joining us in studio. And the conversation here will be, of course, with regard to the Worldwide Fund for Nature in Africa, which is in partnership with UNESCO to carry out a two-day training program for education for sustainable development. Right, and so Zipporah, let's begin with you. The end of the UN decade for the education for sustainable development, that was from 2005 to 2014, ended with the launch of the Global Action Program. Yes. Right, and this is a program that was meant to address gaps in the different priority areas, and one of those gaps was a lack of capacity, among the youth to be able to take action towards sustainability. Talk to us about that Global Action Program and what exactly came out of it.
Yeah, okay. We had the end of decade, the end of the UN decade on education for sustainable development. The decade was from 2005 to 2014. So at the end of the decade, there was a review on what had been achieved in the global arena in terms of education for sustainable development. And there were gaps that were recognized. And one of the gaps actually was on youth empowerment. So when the Global Action Program was formed, there was the priority area number 4, which actually touches on the youth. So WWF is actually a partner with UNESCO in this area of youth empowerment. We're working with UNESCO, leading on in Africa in terms of youth empowerment. So we developed a flagship program to see how can we help youth and especially empower youth leaders to go and empower others. So we developed a program whereby we need to conduct at least capacity building, training youth on different issues, leadership, sustainability, issues to do with environment, project management, conflict resolution, a whole wide array of things. Now, what I'd like to mention is that actually this was not decided by WWF or UNESCO. We actually carried out a monkey survey. We sent out to various youth leaders all over Africa, and we told them, what do you want us to build your capacity on? Because some of these youth leaders, some of them already have capacity, some of them have been to the university, others are working in their own CBOs, leading their own CBOs on the ground. So we told them, tell us what you want to do, what you want to build your capacity on. So they gave us a whole list of things, and we prioritized them, and issues to do with leadership came up.
Right.
We want skills on leadership. We want skills on to build more skills on sustainability. We want to be built more on project management, conflict resolution, and we also brought in the issue of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, because all these youth are coming from countries who have, of course, are implementing their action plans on SDGs, and each country has its own priorities. So how do the youth recognize their niche, even in whatever they do, to contribute to this agenda, even as we move on with the SDGs?
Right.
Yeah.
And that is the basis of the training?
That is the basis of the training.
So when is the training taking place?
The training takes place tomorrow, Thursday and Friday. We'll be at Amber Hotel. We have 42 youth from all over Africa. We actually sent out an application for them to fill, youth leaders, to tell us what they do and probably their contributions towards sustainable development. And if they belong to a good youth network, a strong youth network, what they're doing on the ground. So we had to go through a series of many applications, and we shortlisted youth from all over Africa. And we are happy that they're all coming in today. We made sure that they don't come in yesterday. We wanted them to have their Valentine. So they're all coming in today, and we're looking forward to meeting all these youth and to train them. Yes.
And of course, Brian, being from youth from 42 countries, they'll be able to exchange ideas, exchange experiences, and even the things that they go through. But what are the main objectives of this training?
The main objectives, thank you once again. The main objective is to, as Madam has said, enhance capacity and networking. Many of the youth leaders within Africa have the urge to contribute towards their societies on different fronts, be in terms of, in relation to the SDGs, aspects of poverty eradication, aspects of sustainable lifestyles, aspects of clean energy, and amongst others, clean cities. So many of our things have been ad hoc. Some of them have not also been recognized. But the major beauty of this is by having members of different nations come here and we exchange and we share experiences, we are able to domesticate our different concerns so that we can have a clear voice and also be mentored on areas of leadership once again and be trainers of trainers within our different environments. And this is something that we hope that over time we can be able to replicate in our different entities and villages amongst others so that the whole of Africa, of course, can be more sustainable. This also contributes to different agenda for the African continent. We have the Agenda 2063, that Africa should be resilient and sustainable in its own ways. It also contributes to the SDG 4.7. This is on environmental education. It contributes also to partnerships, of course, US SDG number 17, amongst others. But through this exchange, we'll be able to do more and, of course, assimilate and bring more views on the table.
And, of course, with this training program, what is on the agenda with regard to speakers? Are there exercises? Will there be speeches? What is the agenda?
We want this workshop to be actually participatory. So we have different sessions. We have a session on sustainability. We have a session on systems thinking. We want the youth to be able to think from a holistic approach, looking at the from the different angles of sustainable development, and also thinking as a whole, not just thinking about one component. If you're thinking about your social or economic, whatever you want to do, you also have to think about what are the impacts on the environment, and what can I do to mitigate, this impact? Because, of course, we have to have development, and we can't stop development, and we are happy to develop. But we want to ensure that we have sustainable development and mitigate any impacts that we have on the environment. Another agenda is on conflict resolution. I mean, when you look at what is happening in Africa and probably in the world, you notice that we spend lots of billions of dollars on war. We have this young generation coming up. How can we make them think differently? How can we make them think that they can actually, because they are our leaders, probably of today and especially of tomorrow, how can we make them think that they don't need to use violence, or the people don't need to go to fight, to articulate, to put forth their issues? How can people engage in peaceful dialogue? How can we resolve conflicts? So it's a very important part of this training, and we want leaders who can be able to engage and promote peaceful resolution of issues even as we move on. Yeah, so that is one thing. And we also have a session on project management, because these are leaders, these are young leaders, and at one point or another, they'll be entrusted to manage projects, maybe SDG projects or projects in their context or wherever they work. So how can they be able to engage, to know how to plan and, manage things and in an accountable way. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. And Brian, as an environmental education specialist, we brought in the Sustainable Development Goals. And the bigger notion is that there's a lot of marginalization in terms of information, because when you go down to the rural areas and you ask the youth about what is contained in the Sustainable Development Goals, they may not be able to tell you that. So with the assessment that you did on the ground, how aware are the youth with regard to the SDGs?
Surprisingly, if I may, youth are very aware of this. However, how they could be able to contribute and voice their concerns is something that has been a challenge. They know and do quite a lot of practices that relate to SDGs, aspects of environmental conservation, for example, in relation to this training, aspects of clean energy. But one thing that I may like to highlight that they asked for, they would like things to be more hands-on, change theory into practice, so that they may have skills in lifelong learning. Through this training, if I may, what we'll be able to articulate and learn on this, we'll be able to replicate them on ground, and by doing that, also make sure that the people on ground have more lifelong learning skills. We also have formal leadership and training, of course, through education, the schools and universities, tertiary education. And I would just like to say that the only concern that has been a challenge is the capacity and empowerment of youth, but quite from the survey that we did, they are quite eloquent and articulate of these SDG
All right,
issues.
and of course, let's talk about the partnership that you have, because you're not working alone. What partnerships do you have with regard to this training?
We'll be working with WWF, but we'll be working with UNESCO. We have partnered with UNESCO to implement this training program. And I would just like to mention that this particular program, which is being hosted here in Nairobi, is actually part of a bigger other trainings that are going on. So UNESCO has managed to organize also for other workshops. We have a workshop that will take place in India. It's already taking place. There's also another one that will take place in Dublin for the youth in Europe. So we have them spread out all over in different areas. We have one that will take place in Bahrain, led by a youth leader who's working in the Kingdom of Bahrain. So we actually have many, many partners all over who are actually going to implement this youth capacity building program led by UNESCO. And WWF, we are the partner, implementing partner in Africa. And of course, we have Brian, who's actually been working with UNEP also, and also quite a good, strong youth leader. We hope that he's also bringing his skills even as we train him.
All right, all right. So just before we wind up, just a reminder where and when that workshop will be.
So the workshop will be held tomorrow and Friday, that is the 16th and 17th, at Amber Hotel in Nairobi.
All right, so is it free for anybody else to come other than the 42 participants?
We actually had to select the 42 participants.
Only, so it's not open to the public?
It's not open to the public, but we are commissioning those youths to also go and conduct similar trainings within their contexts.
All right, all right. Yeah. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That is Zipporah Musyoki-Webola, who is the Regional Coordinator of Education for Sustainable Development Program, as well as Brian Waswala, who is an Environmental Education Specialist.